Daniel had been traveling through space for months. His ship, the Horizon, glided silently among stars, carrying him farther than any human had gone before. He was on a mission of exploration, sent to study alien civilizations and their worlds. Today, his destination was a planet that glowed with strange colors, a world unlike anything he had ever seen. From orbit, it shimmered like a jewel, with floating islands and rivers of liquid that glowed softly under the planet's twin suns. As he descended, Daniel felt a mixture of excitement and caution. This world was uncharted, and he knew that its inhabitants might be wary or even hostile to humans. But he was trained for this. Years of survival training, diplomacy, and quick thinking had prepared him. Still, nothing could have prepared him for what he would see first on this planet. The landing was smooth. Daniel stepped out of the ship and felt the strange air on his skin. It was thin but breathable, carrying a faint floral scent that seemed almost unreal. The ground beneath him shimmered slightly, as if alive. He noticed the plants around him were not like any on Earth. Some had crystal-like leaves, while others floated slightly above the ground, glowing softly. He was exploring carefully when a sound stopped him in his tracks. A voice. It was clear, powerful, and female, yet it carried an authority he could feel deep in his chest. He turned and saw her, the alien queen. She stood on a raised platform of natural stone, her figure tall and regal. Her skin was a soft shade of violet, marked with patterns that looked like carved lines. Not random, but deliberate. Her eyes were large and bright, almost glowing with intelligence and command. Yet there were scars and marks on her face, and some parts of her features were not symmetrical. Daniel could tell that she might see herself as ugly, perhaps because her people valued perfection. She looked at him with suspicion. Her gaze was sharp, as if she were trying to measure his intent. "Why are you here, human?" she asked, her voice echoing slightly in the strange air. Daniel raised his hands slowly, showing he meant no harm. "I come in peace. I am an explorer. I wish to learn about your world and your people." The queen's eyes narrowed. "Humans have a history of war. You cannot be trusted." Daniel smiled gently, a smile meant to calm, not charm. "I understand your caution." "I would feel the same in your place." For a moment there was silence. Then she said something that surprised him. "Why call me beautiful?" "I'm ugly, human." Daniel paused, taking in her words. He had not called her beautiful yet. And yet in her voice he heard the hurt of someone who had never been seen for who they truly were. "Because beauty is not just what the eye can see," he said carefully. "It is courage, wisdom, and strength, and I see all of that in you." She looked at him, her suspicion mixed with disbelief. Her people had always valued outward perfection. She had always been told her scars, her unusual features, made her weak. And yet this human, so small and fragile compared to her, spoke as if none of that mattered. Daniel took a cautious step forward. "I do not judge by appearances. I judge by heart. And your heart is strong, Queen Zira." For the first time her gaze softened slightly. She was not used to being seen in this way, not as an object of judgment or mockery, but as someone of worth. She studied him carefully, trying to see if he lied. She found no lies, only honesty. "You are bold, human," she said. "Or perhaps foolish. My people do not welcome outsiders." "I do not wish to cause trouble," Daniel said. "I only wish to understand." The queen considered him for a moment, then nodded slightly. "Perhaps you may walk with me? But do not presume I trust you." Daniel bowed his head respectfully. "I will not presume. Thank you for allowing me this chance." She led him through a path that twisted among glowing plants and floating rocks. Daniel could feel the pulse of the planet beneath his feet, subtle but constant, as if the world itself were alive. Strange creatures watched them from the distance, some with wings, others with many eyes, but none approached. It was clear that the queen commanded respect, not just from her people but from the world itself. As they walked, Daniel tried to ask questions without seeming intrusive. "Your planet is beautiful," he said. "How did it come to be like this?" Zira glanced at him, her sharp features softening slightly in amusement. "Beauty is not always a gift. Sometimes it is a shield. My people learned long ago to adapt or perish." Daniel nodded. "I can see why you survived. It must have taken great strength." Her lips curved slightly, almost a smile. "You do not fear me. Most humans would tremble in my presence." "I do not see a reason to fear someone who can see truth," Daniel replied. "And you see truth in me, even if you do not fully trust it yet. For a moment, Zira was silent. The queen had always relied on power and perfection to command respect, and yet here was a human who seemed unaffected by either. His calm confidence puzzled her. No one had ever looked at her without judgment before. Suddenly, a rustling sound came from the glowing bushes. Both Daniel and Zira tensed. From the shadows, small, aggressive creatures leaped forward, their sharp teeth glinting in the light. They were fast, moving with precision and intent to harm. Daniel acted instinctively. He grabbed a small energy weapon from his belt and fired carefully, aiming to scare rather than kill. The creatures hissed and retreated into the shadows. Zira watched him, impressed by his calm under pressure. "You handle danger well," she said. "Perhaps humans are not as weak as my people think." Daniel smiled, not arrogantly but warmly. "Strength comes in many forms. I believe your people have strength too, even if it is different from mine." They continued walking, and Zira began to ask questions, tentative at first, about his travels and human civilization. Daniel answered honestly, explaining the wonders and failures of humanity. He did not hide their mistakes, but he did not dwell on them either. He wanted her to see humans as they truly were, capable of both courage and error, but always striving to learn. By the time the floating city appeared on the horizon, Daniel felt a sense of awe. The city hovered above the ground, shimmering in the twin sunlight. Towers spiraled into the sky like crystal spires, and bridges of light connected them. Zira walked with purpose, her steps confident despite her self-doubt. "You will stay in the city while I attend to my duties," she said. "You will be watched, but I will ensure you are not harmed." "I am grateful," Daniel said, bowing slightly. "I will respect your rules and your people." As they entered the city, Daniel noticed the alien guards watching closely, their eyes wary. But none made a move to harm him. He realized that even though Zira claimed herself ugly, the respect her presence commanded was undeniable. Her confidence, though hidden, inspired loyalty. At night, Daniel stood on a balcony overlooking the glowing city. The lights reflected off his ship in the distance, a reminder of the world he had come from. He thought about Zira, about her strength and her insecurities, and he realized that this encounter was only the beginning. Somewhere inside the city, the alien queen rested, perhaps thinking of him as well. She could not deny the warmth in his words, the kindness in his smile. For the first time in a long while, she wondered if she could be seen for who she truly was. Not just her scars, not just her features, but her mind, her courage, her soul, and Daniel, watching the twin suns set on her world, smiled. He knew that beauty was not something he could force her to see in herself, but he hoped that one day she would understand it on her own. For now, the adventure was only beginning. A human and an alien queen, two beings from completely different worlds, had met, and in that meeting, something extraordinary was already starting to grow, a bond that could change both their lives forever. The morning light of Zira's city spilled over the floating towers, painting the crystal spires in shades of gold and purple. Daniel awoke in the guest quarters assigned to him, a room that was unfamiliar but comfortable. Large windows offered a view of the city's glowing bridges, and in the distance, the strange rivers of light wound through the landscape like glowing snakes. He prepared for the day, knowing that his first encounter outside the guest quarters would set the tone for his relationship with the alien queen and her people. He had been warned that Zira was wary, but he felt ready. Confidence and patience would be his tools. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Zira stood there, her violet skin almost luminous in the morning light, her expression calm but distant. "It is time," she said simply. "We have matters to attend." Daniel rose and followed her without hesitation. The corridors of the floating city were unlike anything he had seen. Light flowed beneath the floors, illuminating the paths in shifting patterns. The walls were transparent in parts, revealing floating gardens, creatures moving gracefully, and the vast expanse of the planet beyond. He tried to take it all in, careful not to stare too much and offend. Zira led him to a transport platform that hovered silently. As they ascended, Daniel realized how immense the city truly was. Bridges connected towers, and smaller floating islands circled the main structures. The people of the city moved with precision, their movements elegant and controlled. But many glanced at Daniel with suspicion. He felt their eyes, but he did not flinch. He knew he would need to earn their trust slowly. Their destination was a council chamber, a large open space with a high ceiling made of crystalline material. Zyra took her place at the center, and Daniel followed cautiously, keeping a respectful distance. "These humans are strange," one of her advisors whispered to another. "They speak boldly, yet they carry no weapons." Zyra's eyes flicked toward the whisperers. She did not respond, but her posture was commanding enough to silence them. Daniel noticed this and felt a faint admiration. Even in her self-doubt, her authority was undeniable. Zyra introduced Daniel as an explorer and a friend, though her words carried caution. The council members were skeptical, questioning his presence and his intentions. Daniel answered with patience, explaining his mission and expressing his respect for their civilization. He did not exaggerate, nor did he hide the truth of humanity's flaws. Despite their skepticism, he demonstrated his knowledge of technology, quickly identifying a problem in one of the chamber's energy panels. With careful adjustments, he repaired the system, restoring the room's illumination to full strength. The council members watched in silent surprise. Zyra raised an eyebrow. "You handle our technology with ease. This is unusual for your kind." Daniel smiled. "I have trained for many things, Queen Zyra. I learn quickly and I observe carefully." After the council meeting, Zyra decided to take Daniel outside the city to show him more of the planet. They traveled on a high-speed hovercraft, weaving through floating islands and glowing rivers. The landscape was breathtaking, but Daniel was alert. He knew beauty often hid danger. Sure enough, they encountered a sudden storm. Clouds of glowing particles swirled around them, reducing visibility and making the hovercraft unstable. Zyra handled the controls expertly, but even she could not anticipate every twist of the wind. Daniel leaned forward, analyzing the craft's systems. "If you adjust the energy distribution to the stabilizers and reduce the thrust on the left side, we can ride the wind rather than fight it," he suggested. Zyra hesitated for a moment, then followed his instructions. The craft leveled out, gliding safely through the storm. For a moment, they were both silent, the wind whipping past them, the glowing particles creating a surreal light show. "You think quickly?" Zyra said finally, her voice calm, but impressed. "Humans are not often so clever under pressure." Daniel shrugged modestly. "I have had to survive in difficult situations. I have learned to stay calm and think ahead." As the storm passed, they landed on a plateau overlooking a vast valley. Strange creatures moved below, some large and gentle, others small and quick. Daniel observed them carefully, noting their behavior and the patterns of movement. Zyra stood beside him, her eyes scanning the horizon. For the first time, she spoke of herself openly. "My people value perfection. I have never felt I met their standards. That is why I doubt myself so often. Even now, I am unsure if I deserve respect." Daniel turned to her, meeting her gaze steadily. "You have earned respect through your actions, not your appearance. You lead, you protect, and you survive. That is what matters." Zyra looked at him, trying to hide the flicker of emotion in her eyes. "And you, human, why do you see me this way? I am not beautiful in your terms, and yet you call me so." Daniel smiled, patient and calm. "Beauty is not skin deep. True beauty is in courage, wisdom, and kindness. I see that in you, Queen Zyra, and I see it clearly." She looked away, embarrassed by her own vulnerability. No one had ever spoken to her with such honesty, without flattery or fear. She felt a strange mixture of frustration and curiosity. Their quiet moment was interrupted by a sudden noise, a rumble from below the plateau. They looked down and saw a group of creatures approaching, large and aggressive, moving with speed and precision. Zyra stiffened, recognizing the threat immediately. Daniel did not hesitate. He pulled a small device from his pack, analyzing the creature's movement. "They are coordinated. We need to act fast." Zyra nodded, trusting him. Together they devised a plan. Daniel set small traps, using his knowledge of technology to create barriers that would slow the creatures without harming them. Zyra used her natural command to direct the smaller creatures away, guiding them safely past the traps. The plan worked. The creatures, confused and slowed by the traps, eventually retreated back into the forest. Zyra looked at Daniel with a mixture of relief and admiration. "You are more resourceful than I expected," she said. Daniel smiled. "And you are braver than I imagined. You command even when fear is present, and that is what makes you strong." As the sun began to set, Painting the valley in shades of gold and violet, Zyra and Daniel returned to the city. The experience had left both of them thoughtful. Zyra began to understand that Daniel's admiration was sincere, not a trick or a test. She began to feel something she had not felt in a long time: trust. Daniel, in turn, was learning about her world and her people, seeing strength in ways he had never imagined. He realized that beauty was not about appearance, but about the choices one made, and the courage one showed. That night, Daniel stood on the balcony of his quarters, looking out over the glowing city. He thought about Zyra, about her strength and her insecurities. He knew that their journey together would be challenging, but also full of discovery and growth. Somewhere in the palace, Zyra looked at the stars from her own chamber, thinking of the human who had entered her life. She could not deny the warmth in his words, the calm confidence in his smile. For the first time, she felt a spark of hope that perhaps she could be seen for who she truly was. And in that quiet moment, on a planet filled with wonders and dangers, a human and an alien queen began a connection that could change both their worlds forever. The adventure was far from over. Trust had been planted, but challenges awaited. The bond between them, fragile yet strong, would be tested in ways neither could yet imagine. The morning sun spilled over the floating towers once again, but today the city did not feel peaceful. A quiet tension lingered in the air, subtle but unmistakable. Daniel noticed it immediately as he walked through the corridors of the palace. Guards moved with unusual alertness, and council members whispered in corners, glances filled with suspicion and unease. Zyra walked beside him, her violet skin glowing softly in the light, her expression calm yet controlled. She had sensed the unrest herself and knew that something was brewing among her people. Some of the nobles had always questioned her authority, criticizing her appearance and doubting her capability. Now she feared those doubts were turning into action. "Daniel," Zyra said quietly, her voice almost lost in the sound of the palace's hum. "There are whispers. Some wish to challenge me. They believe my appearance makes me unfit to lead." Daniel turned to her, eyes steady.
"They may doubt, but they will see the truth."
"You are a leader not because of appearances, but because of courage, wisdom, and strength. That cannot be taken from you." Zyra looked down, a shadow of doubt crossing her face. "It is easier said than believed. My people have long valued perfection. They see my scars and flaws, and they use them as weapons." Daniel reached out, placing a hand gently on her arm. "Then show them what perfection truly is, not in looks, but in action. You are stronger than any standard of beauty they impose." Her eyes met his, and for a brief moment the vulnerability she usually hid behind regal composure surfaced. She had spent her life masking her insecurities, but Daniel's calm honesty gave her courage. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent summons to the council chamber. Zyra led Daniel inside where the council members were already assembled. The atmosphere was tense, the air thick with anticipation. Zyra took her place at the center and all eyes turned to her. One of the nobles, a tall figure with sharp features, stepped forward. "Your rule is questioned, Queen Zyra. Many believe your appearance is unworthy of leadership. We demand proof that you are fit to lead." Zyra's gaze did not waver. She remained calm, her posture commanding. "You question my rule?" she asked, her voice steady. "And what do you offer as proof of your own worthiness?" The noble faltered, but others whispered support. They had planned this challenge carefully, hoping to undermine her confidence. Daniel watched quietly, analyzing the situation. He could see the strategy. They wanted to create doubt, to force her into a mistake that could justify their rebellion. Daniel stepped forward, careful not to overstep. "If I may speak," he said, "Queen Zyra has shown wisdom and courage. She leads not because of appearances, but because of actions. Every decision she makes is for the benefit of her people." The council members turned to him, surprised by his boldness. "Who are you to speak of leadership?" one demanded. "I am a human," Daniel replied calmly. "But I have seen leadership in many forms. I have studied courage, strategy, and integrity. I speak not as a judge, but as someone who has witnessed her actions." Zyra glanced at him, a subtle smile forming. His support was unexpected, but it gave her a new kind of strength, a reminder that respect and trust could come from places she had never imagined. The council continued to argue, but Daniel remained steady, answering questions when necessary and providing insight into her recent accomplishments. He spoke of her bravery during the storms, her quick thinking during crises, and her dedication to her people. Slowly, some council members began to nod, realizing that her leadership could not be judged by appearance alone. After the council meeting, Zyra and Daniel stepped onto a balcony overlooking the city. The twin suns cast long shadows across the floating towers. She was silent for a moment, lost in thought. "They are clever," she said finally. "They tried to undermine me with words, with whispers. They hoped fear would take root in me." Daniel looked at her steadily. "And did it?" She shook her head, a small smile forming. "Not this time. Your words, human, helped. You reminded me of what I already knew but had forgotten, that my actions define me, not my appearance." Daniel nodded. "Sometimes we need a reminder, especially when others try to make us doubt ourselves." Their moment of calm did not last long. A messenger arrived with urgent news. A group of nobles was planning to mobilize forces outside the city. They intended to challenge Zyra openly, to prove their point by force if necessary. Zyra's expression hardened. "They do not understand the consequences. They believe strength is only in numbers or outward perfection." Daniel studied the report carefully. "They underestimate you, and that is their mistake. But we must act carefully. Confrontation could be dangerous." Zyra nodded, appreciating his strategic mind. Together, they devised a plan. Daniel would help identify the leaders of the rebellion, gather evidence of their plot, and create a strategy that would expose them without bloodshed. Zyra would use her authority to manage the people and maintain order within the city. Over the next few days, they worked tirelessly. Daniel moved quietly through the city, observing, listening, and analyzing. He discovered hidden communications between the rebels, notes detailing secret meetings and plans to seize key locations. He carefully documented everything, ensuring that they would have undeniable proof when the time came. Meanwhile, Zyra strengthened her presence among the citizens. She visited districts, spoke with workers, and demonstrated her commitment to the people's safety and well-being. Slowly, support for her grew, and whispers of doubt began to fade. One evening, as they reviewed the evidence together, Zyra spoke quietly. "I have never had a human by my side like this before. You see me, not my flaws, but my purpose." "That is rare," Daniel smiled gently. "I see courage and wisdom, Queen Zyra. That is what truly matters. The rest is insignificant." She looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mix of gratitude and something she did not yet understand. For years she had felt unseen, judged only by her appearance. Daniel's acceptance was unfamiliar but comforting, a reminder that true value lies beyond the surface. The day of confrontation arrived. A group of rebels marched toward the city's gates, confident in their numbers and plan. Zyra and Daniel watched from the palace as the forces approached. The tension was palpable, the air electric with anticipation. When the rebels reached the gates, Zyra stepped forward, flanked by her loyal guards. Daniel stood beside her, calm and prepared. "Your actions have been noted," Zyra said, her voice carrying over the assembled forces. "You believe my appearance makes me weak. You are mistaken. Leadership is not given. It is earned. And I have earned it through courage, wisdom, and dedication to my people." Daniel presented the evidence of the rebels' secret plots. The documents, intercepted messages, and witness testimonies left no room for doubt. The rebels' confidence faltered, and some tried to retreat, realizing that their plan had failed. Zyra's voice rang out again, firm and commanding. "Those who seek to undermine this city will find no support here. Let this be a lesson. True strength is measured by action, not by appearance." The rebels, confronted with their own deception and Zyra's unwavering leadership, dispersed. The city remained safe, and the people's trust in their queen grew stronger than ever. As the sun set over the floating towers, Daniel and Zyra stood together, overlooking the peaceful city. The day had been challenging, but they had faced it with strategy, courage, and trust. Zyra turned to Daniel, a soft smile on her face. "I owe you thanks, human. Your wisdom and guidance helped me see clearly. Perhaps I am stronger than I believed." Daniel smiled, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You have always been strong. You only needed a reminder." That night, as the city settled into quiet, Daniel reflected on the events of the day. He realized that true leadership was not about perfection, but about integrity, courage, and the willingness to act for the greater good. Zyra had proven herself not just to her people but to herself. And somewhere in the palace, Zyra gazed at the stars, thinking of the human who had entered her life. She could not deny the bond forming between them, a connection built on trust, respect, and shared experiences. The journey was far from over. Challenges awaited, both from within the city and beyond. But Daniel and Zyra had shown that together, they could face anything. In the quiet night, a human and an alien queen stood side by side, ready to confront the future with courage, wisdom, and the understanding that true beauty and strength come from within. The morning sky over the floating city was a mix of violet and gold, the twin suns casting long reflections over the crystal towers. Despite the calm appearance, Daniel and Zyra knew the danger had not passed. The council had been shaken, but whispers of rebellion still lingered in hidden corners. Some nobles refused to accept Zyra's authority, plotting quietly, hoping for another chance to seize power. Zyra paced in her private chamber, her long shadow stretching across the floor. Daniel watched her carefully. "You cannot fight shadows alone," he said softly. "We must find the source of this unrest and face it openly. Only then will the city be truly safe." Zyra stopped pacing and looked at him. "You speak as if it is simple, but their cunning is greater than brute force. They know the weaknesses in my people's minds, and they try to use them against me." Daniel stepped closer, calm and confident. "Weakness exists only if you let it. You have proven yourself time and time again. The challenge now is not your ability, but your willingness to act decisively." For a moment, Zyra considered his words. She had spent much of her life hiding behind her title, afraid of failure and judgment, but Daniel's steady gaze reminded her that true strength comes from courage and action, not from hiding. "We will act together," she said finally, her voice firm. "You will help me uncover the conspirators. Then we will show the city that fear and doubt have no place here." They began by reviewing the intelligence Daniel had gathered. Hidden messages, secret meetings, and coded communications pointed to a few key nobles who were orchestrating the unrest. One name stood out, a high-ranking council member known for manipulation and influence. Zyra's eyes narrowed. This individual had been spreading doubt among the citizens for months, weakening their loyalty. "We must expose him without causing chaos," Daniel said. "If we act carelessly, the city itself could become a battlefield." Zyra nodded. "We will need precision. The people must see the truth, and the conspirators must not escape justice." Over the next several days, Daniel and Zyra worked in secrecy. They monitored the nobles' movements, intercepted messages, and used their combined skills to piece together the full extent of the plot. Daniel's human intuition and analytical mind complemented Zyra's knowledge of her people and authority. Together they formed a plan to reveal the conspirators during the council assembly, ensuring that the evidence was undeniable. During this time, Zyra began to rely on Daniel more than she expected. His calm demeanor and clever solutions made her feel secure in a way she had not felt in years. She began to trust him not just as an ally, but as someone who understood her beyond her title or appearance. "You are unlike any human I have met," Zyra admitted one evening as they worked late in the council archives. "Most would have tried to impress me or worse, fear me, but you only show respect." Daniel smiled, adjusting a set of holographic documents. "Respect is not given lightly, Queen Zyra. It must be earned, and you have earned it many times over." She looked down, a faint blush coloring her violet skin. "You make it sound simple. But I am not simple. My flaws, my scars, they make people doubt me." Daniel's voice was steady. "Your scars tell a story. They show you have survived, that you have fought and endured. That is what matters, not how your face appears." For a moment, Zyra felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps it was true. Perhaps the strength she had always dismissed as ordinary was enough. The day of the council confrontation arrived. The chamber was packed with nobles, guards, and advisors. The tension was palpable, the air heavy with anticipation. Zyra took her place at the center, Daniel standing quietly at her side. The lead conspirator stepped forward, his expression confident and smug. "Your rule is questionable, Queen Zyra. Many of your decisions are flawed, and your appearance has always been a point of concern. How can we trust a leader who cannot even meet the standard of her own people?" Zyra's eyes met his, steady and unyielding. "You mistake my appearance for weakness. Leadership is measured by action, courage, and wisdom. And it is clear that you lack all three." Daniel stepped forward, presenting the evidence they had gathered: intercepted messages, plans for rebellion, and witnesses' testimonies. The chamber fell silent as the nobles realized their plot had been uncovered. The conspirators' confidence faltered, their smug expressions replaced with fear and anger. "You see the truth," Daniel said calmly. "These individuals sought to divide and weaken the city, using deception and fear. Their actions threatened not only Queen Zira but the people they claimed to serve." Zira's voice rang out, firm and commanding. "Those who would sow doubt and chaos have no place here. They have been exposed and justice will follow." The conspirators tried to speak to defend themselves, but the evidence was undeniable. The council members, once uncertain, now stood in agreement. Zira's leadership had been proven not by words alone, but by action and strategy. As the assembly concluded, Zira stepped out onto a balcony overlooking the city. The citizens had gathered below, their eyes filled with admiration and trust. The city that had been divided by whispers and doubt now stood united, inspired by their queen's courage. Daniel joined her, looking out over the glowing towers and floating bridges. "They see the truth now," he said. "Your strength is undeniable." Zira turned to him, her violet eyes reflecting the fading light of the suns. "I could not have done this without you, Daniel. Your guidance, your calm, and your trust have reminded me of what I already knew but forgot." Daniel smiled gently. "You never needed me to lead. I only reminded you that you already had the strength within." The night was quiet, the city bathed in a soft glow. Zira and Daniel walked through the palace gardens, the air filled with the scent of glowing flowers. It was a rare moment of peace, and they both appreciated it. "You have changed my view of humans," Zira said, her voice soft. "I believed your kind were unpredictable, dangerous. But you are steady, brave, and thoughtful. Perhaps there is more to humanity than I imagined." Daniel chuckled softly. "Humans are not perfect, but we have our strengths, just as you have yours." They paused at the edge of a reflecting pool, the water shimmering with colors from the bioluminescent plants around them. Zira looked at her reflection, then at Daniel. "I still struggle with seeing myself as worthy," she admitted. "But perhaps I am learning." Daniel stepped closer, his gaze steady. "You are more than worthy, Queen Zira. You lead with courage, wisdom, and heart. That is the truest measure of worth." For the first time in a long while, Zira felt a sense of confidence that was not tied to appearance. She realized that true beauty and strength were not determined by others' standards, but by the choices she made and the courage she showed. As the night deepened, Daniel and Zira stood together, looking out over the city they had protected and guided. The bond between them had grown stronger through challenges and shared victories. They had faced danger, political intrigue, and doubt, and had emerged not just unbroken but stronger. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The city would continue to grow, and there would always be those who tested its queen. But Daniel and Zira knew that together, they could face whatever came. Trust had been built, respect earned, and a connection formed that neither time nor danger could easily break. And somewhere in the quiet night, under the light of twin suns now hidden beyond the horizon, a human and an alien queen understood something extraordinary: that courage, wisdom, and trust could bridge worlds, and that true strength and beauty always came from within. The morning light of the twin suns bathed the floating city in soft gold and violet hues. Peace had returned, but Daniel and Zira knew that leadership was never static. Challenges could appear at any moment. Yet today the city seemed calm, almost serene. Citizens moved along the glowing bridges. Children played near floating gardens, and the unusual creatures of the planet moved quietly in their own rhythm. Zira stood on her balcony, watching the city she had fought so hard to protect. Her violet skin shimmered in the sunlight, and for the first time in many years, she felt a sense of pride that had nothing to do with outward appearance. She had faced doubt, rebellion, and fear, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident. Daniel joined her quietly, standing beside her without a word. He had been by her side through the council confrontations, the storms, and the challenges of her people. Now he watched her in silence, knowing that this moment was hers alone. "You have done well, Queen Zira," he said softly. "The city trusts you, the people respect you, and you have proven your strength." Zira looked at him, her large eyes reflecting both gratitude and a hint of wonder. "I could not have done it without you, Daniel. You reminded me of what I had forgotten. That true strength comes from within, not from the judgments of others. Daniel smiled gently. You had it all along. I only helped you see it. For a moment they were silent, simply taking in the view of the city below. Then Zira spoke, her voice quieter, more personal. I have always believed that my scars, my unusual appearance, made me unworthy. I never thought anyone could see beyond them. Daniel turned to her, his gaze steady. I see beyond them. I see courage, wisdom, and heart. That is beauty, Queen Zira. That is strength. Zyra felt a warmth in her chest she had not known before. For the first time she did not feel judged, nor did she doubt her worth. The words of a human, a visitor, an outsider, had unlocked something inside her, something that had always been there but hidden. As the day progressed, Daniel and Zyra worked together to strengthen the city's defenses and reassure its citizens. They visited districts, met with workers and scholars, and shared stories of courage and survival. Everywhere they went, the people's respect for their queen grew. They saw not just her title, but her actions, her intelligence, and her unwavering commitment to their safety. During a quiet moment in the palace gardens, Zira turned to Daniel. Do you know what it feels like to finally be seen for who you are? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel nodded. I understand. It is a rare gift, but one that can change a person's life. You deserve it, Zira. She looked down, her fingers brushing the glowing petals of a nearby flower. For so long I have hidden, afraid of judgment, afraid of failure, but now I feel something I have not felt in years. Confidence, acceptance. Daniel smiled, a gentle warmth in his eyes. You have earned it. Your actions, your courage, your heart, they are undeniable. You have always been worthy. The day turned to evening and the city was bathed in the soft glow of bioluminescent lights. Zyra and Daniel stood on a high balcony, looking out at the floating bridges and towers. The twin suns had set, leaving the sky filled with stars that seemed closer than they had ever appeared. Do you ever wonder? Zyra asked quietly. What would have happened if you had not come to my world? Daniel considered her question. Perhaps you would have faced the same challenges, but alone. I do not know if you would have succeeded without help. But I do know this, you are stronger than any challenge, Zira, and you would have found a way. She smiled softly, touched by his confidence in her. You make it sound simple, but it has not been. I have faced doubt, rebellion, and fear, yet here I stand, not just surviving, but leading. Daniel's gaze met hers, steady and sincere. Because you are more than your fears, more than your doubts. You are a leader, a protector, and a true queen. Zyra felt a deep sense of gratitude. For the first time, she realized that worth was not defined by appearance, by perfection, or by the approval of others. It was defined by action, by courage, and by the willingness to do what was right. As night deepened, a message arrived from the council. The city was fully united, and no further rebellion was anticipated. The conspirators had been removed from power, and the citizens had renewed their trust in Zira. She could finally breathe, knowing that the city was safe and her leadership secure. Daniel and Zira walked through the palace gardens under the starlit sky, their steps slow and deliberate. The air was filled with the scent of glowing flowers, the gentle hum of the planet, and the distant sounds of creatures moving through the gardens. You have changed my view of trust, Zira said, her voice soft. I have always been careful, always guarded, but you have shown me that trust is not a weakness. It is a strength, Daniel nodded. Trust is a gift, Zyra. It must be given carefully, but when it is honored, it can create bonds stronger than any obstacle. She looked at him, her violet eyes reflecting the starlight. I believe I understand that now. You have been a guide, a partner, and a friend. More than that. Perhaps something I have never felt before. Daniel's expression remained calm but warm. Then perhaps we have both learned from each other. You have shown me courage and wisdom, and I have helped remind you of your strength. Together, we have faced challenges that neither of us could have handled alone. For the first time, Zyra allowed herself to feel the depth of their connection. She realized that Daniel's presence had not only helped her lead, but had also helped her see herself as worthy, strong, and capable. The next morning, the city awoke to a celebration. Citizens filled the streets, floating bridges and gardens, showing their gratitude to the queen who had defended them and restored their trust. Zira moved through the crowds with Daniel by her side, her posture regal yet approachable. Smiles, cheers, and gestures of respect followed her every step. Daniel watched quietly, seeing the difference between the queen who had faced doubt and the leader who now commanded respect not by fear but by action. He felt a quiet pride knowing that he had played a small part in helping her realize her own strength. Later, atop the highest tower of the city, Zira and Daniel stood side by side, looking out over the glowing landscape. The twin suns were rising again, casting their light over the floating islands, rivers, and towers. "Do you see it?" Zira asked, her voice filled with wonder. "The city, the world, all of it. And I am a part of it. Not as someone judged by appearance, but as someone who belongs." Daniel nodded. "You are more than a part of it, Zira. You are its heart. Your courage, wisdom, and strength guide everyone, and that is true beauty." Zira turned to him, her eyes soft but steady. "Thank you, Daniel. For your trust, your guidance, and your honesty. You have reminded me of what I could not see in myself." Daniel smiled, a gentle warmth in his gaze. "It was always there. You only needed someone to help you see it." The day continued with celebrations, laughter, and music. Citizens danced on glowing bridges, children played among floating gardens, and the creatures of the planet moved gracefully around the city. It was a day of triumph, not just for Zira, but for the bond she had formed with Daniel. A bond built on trust, courage, and shared experiences. As night fell, Daniel and Zira returned to the palace gardens. The air was cool, the stars bright, and the city below shimmered with life. They stood together in silence, appreciating the peace they had fought for and the lessons they had learned. "Perhaps," Zira said softly, "true beauty is seeing beyond appearances, embracing strength and honoring courage. I understand that now, thanks to you." Daniel placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "And you have shown me that courage and wisdom exist in forms I had never imagined. You have taught me as much as I have taught you." Zira smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Then let us continue forward, human, together, as partners, as allies, as friends." Daniel nodded. "Together." And under the twin suns and the starlit sky, a human and an alien queen stood side by side, united by trust, respect, and the understanding that true beauty and strength always come from within. The challenges they had faced had forged a bond stronger than fear, doubt, or judgment, a bond that would endure no matter what the future held.